if I may add, I would like to ask why you insisted that the media send the questions in writing a day before the press conference. Are you unable to answer unscripted questions?
So the last part of your question is not known to me. First part of your question, it's a sovereign decision that the Icelandic people take here. It is dependent on the policies and the discussions in Iceland, so it's not a topic for me to comment on.
I mean, I can comment on this briefly, and I think the way Ursula is answering this question is very emblematic of how the EU is approaching these types of topics. They know this is a sovereign decision. We have said that the referendum is not now on joining the EU, it's whether we go for these talks again. This is going to take up some oxygen in our system, but we think it's well worth it. We, however, want to get a mandate from the Icelandic public. All three coalition parties agree that we should have this referendum, and this third party that you're referring to wants to respect whatever decision comes out of that referendum, like every other party in this coalition. I will respect whether it's a yes or a no, and the other coalition parties will respect whether it's a yes or no. So at this point, this is where we're at. We will see what comes out of the referendum. I think that is the ultimate mandate, I will say, that we get the people to say what their thoughts are on this matter. And like I said, we have a willingness that is very clear within the coalition that we will respect whatever comes out of this referendum.
Thank you. Madam President, welcome to Iceland. My name is Björn Malmquist. I'm from Icelandic National Broadcasting Service, based in Brussels, actually. I wanted to ask you about specifically about security and defense, since you already announced this new talks about the bilateral security agreements. In this context, the Icelandic government is planning a referendum about resuming the accession talks with the EU, and as you've said yourself on many occasions, enlargement of the EU now has a distinct geopolitical dimension because of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Given what you just announced with the talks about the new bilateral security agreement, how do you see Iceland fitting into this puzzle that is the sort of the geopolitical enlargement of Europe, of the EU, and what benefits would Iceland bring in this context to the European Union?
So very important is the decision on that is with the Icelandic people. Of course, the Icelandic people have to decide on how close we want to be and how to move forward. I think it is important to recall that Iceland's application to the European membership is still valid. That's very interesting. The country is well equipped to undertake this process. We have the EEA, so Iceland is familiar and integrated in the single market. Yeah. We share values. We know each other very well. We are like-minded. So we're close partners. We share the core values. All this is an asset. And I think, again, it is very important that the Icelandic people decide on how they want to shape their future. But I think listening to the two of us, you see how much we have in common, how much potential there is, untapped potential that we could develop. So this speaks for a very close partnership.
Maybe I can just add on this. Obviously, we know a referendum on sort of reopening the talks is on the agenda. But I also want to say that we've, up until this point, had a very strong relationship, aside from that, with the EU. And this security and defense partnership is something that the European Union has done with Norway, with Canada, with other countries that are not members of the EU. But this just shows how well aligned that we are, that there are great opportunities going forward, and that this just further segments our relationship together. But we've obviously gone over the security dimension with Ursula, and also when we met with NATO leaders in Hague just a few weeks ago, of the position, the strategic position of Iceland, which is obviously, I would say, one of its biggest assets. And you see here how we're able to build on that our facilities are the biggest thing that we bring to the table. This security and defense partnership would be another layer to what we already have with the US, with NATO. That's obviously always going to be the vital factor in our defenses here. But it's very important during these types of times in history that we broaden our scope and we have good allies everywhere.
Thank you. And now news agency SÍN.
Yes, hello, welcome to Iceland, Madam President. My name is Hallgerður Kolbrún Jónsdóttir. I'm a reporter at SÍN. You've seen in your visit now in Iceland how civil defense works in a crisis. And for the past few months, Iceland's position as a key member of defense for NATO and Europe has been reiterated. How do you see Iceland's role in this defense, and how has it been watching key operators working today? And if I may, Kristrún, ask you about this trade agreement review, what are you mostly looking at?
Did I get your question right? It's on civil protection. Yeah. Well, this is impressive what I learned and saw today, how wide the scope is, because you live at this place on the globe and you have to master all the risks. So we can learn a lot. You have a whole of society approach, very strong relying on voluntary input from each and everybody. I think this is one of the big strengths of your model. You have a 360-degree look at risks and how to manage them. So it's not a narrow approach to, let's say, traditional security, but it's a wide approach that is embedded in the whole society or carried by the whole of society, and which is very strongly also calling on each and every individual's responsibility for the whole of society. So that is impressive to see. On the other hand, it's highly modern what equipment is concerned, so that you're able to search and rescue in the widest sense, but also to protect yourself, protect, for example, your critical infrastructure. I learned about the exercises you're doing to protect the critical infrastructure, and so far that you're training what happens in case that a data cable, one of the crucial data cable, is being attacked severe and hurt severely. And by doing these exercises, you learn where the gaps are that you have to fill, but also where the strengths are that you have to multiply. Mm-hmm. So very impressive, and something, as I said, where we can learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Just before I go into the trade question very briefly, we have this saying in Iceland, glögt gests augað, or sometimes an outsider's perspective makes you realize the grand scheme of things. And there's been a lot of discussions about security and defense in Europe now, especially, obviously in the US as well, but Europe stepping up. Iceland has been a member of these discussions. And I think a lot of Icelanders feel like that this is something very far from us because we don't have a military. We haven't been active participants in that sense. But what you see is when this all comes together in a day like this is how prepared we are for a lot of the issues that are coming up, really, this resilience mindset, this preparedness mindset that Ursula is talking about. And I think sometimes Icelanders are not aware that this DNA that we have in us, it's not necessarily to be found everywhere, the way we think about being prepared. And so we will always be playing on our strengths when it comes to security and defense. There's not going to be a change in how we address those. And that's why it's so important for us to be able to show the president how we do things. Just briefly on trade, I mean, we obviously are part of the EEA, but we don't have full market access when it comes to the products, and so we have tariffs and there are some market barriers. This is something that we're going to be looking into. This is a big change for us, or could be a big change if we see opportunities there, because this review hasn't taken place since we joined the EEA. We obviously have things that we specifically want to discuss. I can point here for Icelanders, for example, fish, the access of seafood and those types of products into the EU. But this is obviously still something that has not been discussed. We're just open to having these negotiations. And I see great opportunities on that end. But this dialogue is just starting.